A teenage girl who isn't deaf and isn't fluent in American Sign Language or ASL has apparently taken it upon herself to teach various ASL signs to her quite large social media following. And the online deaf community, which apparently exists, is not having it. Let's get into it, guys.
Warning, the following program contains critical thinking, honest opinions, viewpoints on culture that may seem conservative, and a positive view on absolute detestable things such as marriage and children. Listener discretion is advised.
Now, welcome back to Subtle Rampage podcast, where we discuss the things that I feel like discussing. Sometimes those are things of a political nature, sometimes they're of a cultural nature, and sometimes, apparently, like today, they are things that are just stupid internet drama. But, so this topic in particular is honestly very, very trivial in comparison to the things that I normally talk about on this podcast. It's just online drama. It's really not worth talking about. But I think that there is something here worth discussing once we actually break it down. Will I be breaking it down? That's debatable. I'm more so presenting you with a situation that I think there are things to kind of take from it. And hopefully you can do that on your own because we're all critical thinkers here. We're all free thinkers here. So yeah, let's do that. But just real quick before we get into things, I do want to put it out there, okay, that I am coming to you guys today in an injured state of being, all right? See, earlier today at some point, unbeknownst to myself, of course, I did happen to scrape off a little chunk of skin from my finger. I don't know how. I don't know when. I didn't notice until probably way after it happened. Uh, and no, it does not hurt. But yes, it still counts as an injury. And so I just want you to remember this. Those of you watching and listening, okay? If you decide to turn off this podcast and not listen to the whole episode, I just want you to know that you could have supported a severely injured person and chose not to. And that's like cold, very, very cold. Okay, don't be that person, be better. Anyways, as sort of a preface to this story, I do want to note that most of the creators that I'm going to be talking about in regards to the situation are still minors. One of them I think is only like 14, so I'm not gonna be out here criticizing these kids for thinking like kids, okay? But I do think that there is a broader societal context that this controversy is sort of born out of or spurred out from or whatever you want to call it. Okay, and that's why I want to talk about this. So, pretty much, there's this girl, Lola. And apparently, she is a hearing person who has been learning ASL and making videos where she signs along to songs or shows her audience the sign for a specific word, like this.
Today's sign is brother, brother.
And you may be asking, Adelia, what's the problem with her content? I don't see any problems with that video. It seems totally fine. Well, that's honestly what I thought personally. But according to a slew of deaf people who have responded to Lola's videos, she is getting a pretty decent amount of ASL signs completely wrong. It's kind of like if I started going on my social media and telling people that I was saying words in Spanish, but really I was just saying things in gibberish. Apparently it's kind of like that. Now, I don't know how old this girl is, but she looks pretty young. I'm going to assume that she's still a child, and in that case, I am inclined to give her the benefit of the doubt. I mean, maybe she's learning from an outdated ASL book or came across a curriculum that teaches signs differently than they're actually used in real life scenarios. Kind of like how a lot of Spanish curriculums will teach Spanish the way that it's spoken in Spain instead of the way that it's spoken in Mexico, which is kind of different, you know? So I don't know. I mean, for all I know, this girl is just making up the signs all by herself. Don't ask me, okay? I took ASL in middle school. God bless Mrs. Fleet for putting up with my class. But the only signs I remember are the letters of the alphabet, which I guess is still better than nothing, but still. Now, as far as I'm aware, the thing that I guess Lola was initially getting flack for was just that she was getting signs totally wrong and presenting them like she knew what she was talking about, like she was capable of teaching her audience ASL signs. Like there's a ton of videos where she just says something along the lines of today's sign is frog. Frog. And repeats the sign a few times showing her followers how to do it. So yeah, then I guess there were people who came across her videos and they recognized that she was doing these signs totally wrong, and people started leaving comments informing her of this and being like, hey man, what the heck, like why are you teaching people signs if you don't know how to sign the right sign? And I guess multiple deaf creators did like personally reach out to Lola, including Keene, I think is how you say his name, who we'll talk about in a minute. But these deaf creators reached out to her, and even hearing creators reached out to her. But once these people started telling Lola that she was doing the signs wrong and needed to clarify to her audience that she was just learning sign language and wasn't 100% an accurate source, supposedly Lola just started disabling comments on her videos and blocking the people that were trying to talk to her. Which, yeah, maybe not the best move if we're talking ethics, but if this girl is still pretty young, which I think she is, it all kinds of adds up pretty well, and makes perfect sense if we are talking about how a young girl might handle an internet firestorm like this, where she's even getting death threats, which hopefully she's not getting anymore, but that was a thing. Eventually, at some point down the line, all the backlash pushed Lola to put out a statement titled Addressing My Account. On that post, she says, I in no way mean any harm to the deaf community. I am trying to learn sign language and track my journey through it. Please do not learn from me, but from deaf creators such as the ones tagged in this post. I am learning about deaf culture and the deaf community as I go. I have had a lot of backlash about my videos and a lot of encouragement, both from the deaf community. Any funds that I do receive, a portion of that is going to help deaf foundations in the US. I am still going to continue my page, just change up some things so it doesn't seem like I'm teaching. I will still do song covers and show signs that I learn, but clarify more that I am learning and that deaf creators are the one to learn from. Now, she made that post in August of 2022, and it's still kind of pinned up at the top of her profile on Instagram, I assume. It's still somewhere prevalent on the rest of her socials. And I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming it was also around that time that she added the disclaimer, not a teacher, to her social media bios. And obviously, at some point, if you go look at her social media, she started putting that same disclaimer in her individual video descriptions. I guess, however, the disclaimer was still not enough to satisfy both the hearing and deaf people who were upset with her over the whole thing, because here's what another hearing ASL student had to say to Lola even after Lola posted that to her social media.
Hi Lola, I'm Maddie. I'm a hearing student too. I'm learning sign language too. Can we talk? Maybe you need to hear this from a hearing person, not a deaf person, because you don't seem to understand what deaf people are, saying. Stop teaching sign language. Just because your bio says not a teacher doesn't mean you're not teaching. Stop. Stop, please. Like, people are asking you. Before you block me, I want to say a few things. Us as hearing people, we have privilege, okay? And you need to see that. You need to. ASL is not just a language. It's a language, it's a culture, it's people's entire lives. You need to understand that. It's not just a language like a trend, it's not. It's a beautiful language and I love seeing people learn, but you need to stop teaching on TikTok. There's this word, I don't know if you know, because you don't seem to learn from deaf creators and people. So the word is called autism. I think you need to look it up. Please. AUDISM. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I had to Google what the heck autism was, and according to the internet, autism, as described by deaf activists, is a form of discrimination directed against deaf people, which may include those diagnosed as deaf from birth or otherwise. Tom L. Humphreys coined the term in his doctoral dissertation in 1975. So there's that, by the way. In case you didn't know about autism, now you do. So, anyways, this one deaf creator, Keene, who I mentioned before, he's the 14-year-old, okay, that I referenced, and he's been making videos about Lola for I think the whole time this thing has been going on. But he references something on his account, which is kind of even more of a stupid concept. It's called disconscious autism. So he has this not related to Lola video up, but he has this video up where he talks about it, and he remixes a deaf person who made a video saying that since she needs people to take her seriously, she refers to herself as hearing impaired instead of deaf. And he responds to her saying that disconscious autism, which was coined by Dr. Jeannie Gertz, is a form of autism that tacitly accepts dominant hearing norms and privileges. And then he says this usually happens to deaf people when they are raised to believe that hearing is better than deaf. And then Keene pretty much concludes the video by saying disconscious autism needs to be stopped. And it's like, okay, so pretty much disconscious autism is like kind of on the same vein as internalized homophobia or internalized transphobia or internalized racism or whatever you want to call those things, that's what disconscious autism is. If we're putting things on a comparison level, I don't know. Anyways, he also has a decent number of videos criticizing Lola and even one listing off his demands for the creator. So these are both, like, as far as I'm aware, these are both kids, okay? And he's over here making, like, big demands of this other kid, okay? And he says, in the one video, he says, "Some of you have asked me what I want from Lola. I want 4 things from her. 1, to apologize to the public for what she has done to our community. 2, to take down her page on all social media apps. 3, to stop teaching ASL. And 4, to give all the money she has earned to the deaf community." Uh? This is honestly ridiculous, okay? But again, okay, giving the benefit of the doubt considering that this child is still a literal child, right? In other videos, he compares Lola's signing a song to a deaf creator signing the same song, and in the description he says, "See the difference between Savannah and Lola? Savannah's is more smooth and understandable, so that's why Lola shouldn't teach ASL." Okay, fair, that makes sense. Okay, you're comparing 2 different translations, one makes more sense, one is better. Sure. Okay, but then he goes on to say, referencing Lola, she isn't fluent at it. She's also not deaf too, so she shouldn't teach it at all. And that's where we get into the thing I don't understand. It's like, okay, she's not fluent in ASL, so she shouldn't teach it. Makes sense. But then he says she's not deaf, so she shouldn't teach it at all. That part doesn't make sense to me. But that is the direction that a lot of his videos seem to go in. Like this one, where someone comments, "If you aren't deaf, then I think that you can teach ASL. If you're fluent, obviously, just like my French teacher. She isn't from France, obviously, but she is fluent." And then Keene responds saying this. He says, "The answer is no. You can't teach ASL if you are not deaf. It's not your place to teach ASL. There are already many deaf ASL teachers, and many of them are struggling to find jobs teaching ASL because hearing people take their jobs and teach ASL because they think they can do that when they actually can't. Not only that, but hearing people tried to destroy sign language before, like one example is the Milan Conference of 1880, when hearing people decided to ban sign language in schools all over the world. They finally made a public apology and unbanned it 13 years ago. Only 13 years ago. Now they want to teach the language they tried to ban before, then decided it's a trend to teach ASL. It's not your place to teach ASL." sound like familiar reasoning, okay? Sound like an illogical conclusion. And this is the critical thinking that they're teaching kids in schools. That's all I'm gonna say, okay? And it's everywhere. It's all over the internet. At the very least, okay? At the very least. If I had to be super cringy and use some of that like Gen Z internet language that I keep seeing everywhere, I would say it's giving victim mentality. All right. When Keene mentions the Milan conference and groups all hearing people together, like when he says they banned it, now they want to teach it, that's obviously a logically flawed statement. The same goes for when a race baiting person says to a white person, your people back then enslaved African Americans, so your people now shouldn't get a say in what we're talking about. Like, it's the exact same framework of an argument that gets used whenever people are upset about cultural appropriation or racism, or they're demanding reparations for something that happened a hot minute ago, or they're telling men that no, you don't get an opinion on abortion because you're not a woman and this has to do with women's bodies. It's the same type of illogical thinking. And I'm not going to blame this Keene kid for thinking the way that he does, because it's highly likely that he's been taught in school that this is the appropriate way to think, and that he's been taught via social cues, at least online, that this is a totally fine argument to make. um, but anyways, that's kind of the gist of this whole situation. And if I was a PhD getting paid to write and publish research and everything, I would totally dig into this way more for you and give you some solid thesis and connections on, what this has to do with the arguments made for cultural appropriation and abortion and all of that. However, I don't really feel like spending any more time on this than I planned to begin with. So, yeah, let's just boil this down to the main issues that I have, I think, with this situation. Um, One of my biggest issues with this whole thing is the comment sections, okay? Because the comment sections overwhelmingly agree with pretty much everything that this King Kid is saying. And here you go. If anybody commented, I saw multiple comments across multiple videos where somebody would comment and say, is it okay that my ASL teacher at my school is hearing? Like, I have to take it, and I have to take ASL, and my teacher is hearing, and I don't know what to do. Like, really concerned that they're doing the wrong thing by taking a required course or taking the only course available to them and whatever. And then the reply section to these comments would just be full of people telling them that that's not okay, and how dare you even think that that was okay, and haven't you watched any of Keen's videos? Oh my goodness. Yeah, so whatever. uh I mean, I guess I don't know how common it is, but I feel like it's a thing. Okay, I've I've met plenty of um, people who are either the child of a deaf and hearing parent, or they are married to a deaf person. So we all know that deaf people sometimes marry hearing people, right? And that those hearing people can be or become just as fluent in ASL as their deaf partner is, right? Because, they're using it all the time, right? The internet is just an infuriating place sometimes. Get these kids off of it, please. I beg of you, because it's really just all unnecessary drama. But, anyways, another problem that I have with this whole situation is regarding Lola's video specifically, and it's the thing that happens all the time on the internet, okay, or even in person, when you have a group of people ganging up on someone over something that they did wrong. The point gets lost in the sea of wrongdoings being pointed out, because as soon as you have more, like, even if you only have one person accusing somebody of something, but if you have more than one person accusing somebody of something, there's always going to be other things that get lumped in with the first thing that was wrong. So unfortunately, some people, instead of calling Lola out or informing her of the fact that she is doing ASL wrong, and that some people might be taking what she's doing as teaching and learning from her, instead of only pointing that out, there's a lot of people calling out Lola for the fact that she's not deaf. pointing out that she's not deaf as if that is the issue. Which I just think is absolutely crazy. The problem, in my opinion, is not even that Lola doesn't know what she's doing. My problem, um, or the problem is that there are people who are seeing these videos, like just maybe a one-off come up on their For You page, or they, whatever. They're not really paying attention to all this online drama, okay? And they come across her videos and they think that Lola knows what she's doing because they don't know ASL. They don't know what ASL looks like when it's wrong. And they don't do their research and they don't look into Lola and other possible learning resources, and instead just find her videos and start learning from them. That is the problem. And yeah, Lola could stop making videos, or the kid could, whatever. She could do whatever she wants to do, and everyone else could just remember that even though something is on the internet, it doesn't mean it's reliable, and maybe we should all do our research. But maybe that's too much to ask. Maybe. Anyways, y'all, that's all I've got for today. Let me know if you see the connections that I'm making when it comes to the illogical thinking process that seems to run rampant throughout this whole ordeal. You can inform me of your opinions on the whole situation in the comments on my YouTube channel. And make sure, if you're watching on YouTube, to like and subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening on your favorite streaming platform, I appreciate you. Keep doing that. Make sure you follow so you don't miss any future content. And I will be back with more subtle rampages as soon as I feel like it. Bye bye. Stop laughing. I'm doing my podcast with my brother in the room this time, and he won't stop laughing. Oh my god.